So in the book, as I said, I went to a lot of different places, and I want to take you to just one of those places now to give you a taste of what's happening out there. A lot of these places were intentionally chosen because they were places that most of us have never been or would never get a chance to go to, and some of them I got a chance to go just because of this book. And it seemed fitting, given the theme of this conference, to talk about what's happening in the Amazon, as well as what's happened there last summer with the really horrendous wildfire situation, as well as to bring that up because, as I'm sure this audience is attuned, so much of our antibiotics and medicines come from the Amazon. So, brief overview of the Amazon. It's 2/3 the size of the contiguous United States. It's the largest rainforest on the planet. It generates half its own rainfall and contains 20% of the world's rivers. The Amazon River alone has 1,100 tributaries, 17 of those longer than 1,000 miles. There's thousands of species of trees, 2.5 million species of insects, thousands of species of birds, and 3,000 species of fish in the Rio Negro alone. There was a expedition there of roughly 25 scientists that went out to a very, very remote portion of the rainforest, and they spent 25 days there. Thanks. And in that 25 days alone, they discovered 80 species and counting. So that gives you an idea of how biodiverse that region is and how rich it is with life, and as well as how little we still know about it. So the primary purpose of my trip there was to go to a study camp with Dr. Thomas Lovejoy. Many people here have probably heard of him. Some people refer to him as the godfather of biodiversity. He started studying the Amazon in 1965 and has been studying it ever since. He's literally dedicated his entire professional life to studying and trying to take care of the rainforest. He was head of the World Wildlife Fund for 14 years. He's been a White House Science Counsel and has, as I said, completely dedicated his life to trying to conserve as much of the rainforest as possible. So I was along with a small international group of people who had been invited to spend time with him in Camp 41, which is the most famous of his study camps that he set up a long time ago. And so we showed up in Manaus, the biggest city in that part of the rainforest, and from there took a rather long Jeep ride into the jungle, long winding around very steep, sometimes curvy, bumpy clay roads, and got out at the edge of the rainforest in this one area nearby the camp and walked down a small, like, quarter-mile trail to Camp 41, where Dr. Lovejoy had already beaten us there. And here's this esteemed scientist who literally took the time to run down there and welcome each one of us by name, shaking our hand into his camp and thanking us for taking the time out of our busy schedules to go there and be with him. And the camp was situated where it's this small clearing in the middle of the rainforest, and there's no walls anywhere. You walk into the clearing, and over on the right side, there's a tin roof, and underneath it there are poles with hammocks slung between them with mosquito covers. So that's the sleeping area. And then straight ahead there's another tin roof under which are a couple of picnic tables, and that's the kitchen and really basically the lounge area for everyone. And then over on the left there's another tin roof and more hammocks, and that's for the scientists. So that's basically the camp. Pretty primitive, but you are in the rainforest when you're there. And immediately I started to note very profound changes in my perceptions and in my dreams. And so things like, even the first night, just waking up with very, very stirring dreams, some of them profound, some of them very unsettling. But that coupled with just the sounds of the insects, of the howler monkeys at first light, of the birds, that literally feeling the rainforest kind of coming up into my being and pulling me deeper down into it is the best way I could describe it. And that only increased the longer that I stayed there. So one of the scientists that I spoke there was a longtime student of Dr. Lovejoy's, a man named Vitek Jirnek from the Czech Republic. And he had worked in 11 different wildlife research positions around the world. And when I spoke with him at Camp 41, he was working on getting his PhD in ornithology from Louisiana State University and was also a student of Tom's. And I'd just like to read you a brief passage from my interaction with him that really moved me. We talked at length about his work around the world, Vitek's work, and he was very, very enthusiastic about talking about the things that he'd studied and the places he'd gotten to go do research. But he assumed a somber tone when we started talking about the results of his research. Quote, "Island biogeography is no longer an offshore enterprise. It has come to the mainland. It's everywhere. The problem of animal and plant populations left marooned within various fragments under circumstances that are untenable for the long term has begun showing up all over the land surface of the planet. The familiar questions recur. How many mountain gorillas inhabit the forested slopes of the Virunga volcanoes along the shared borders of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Uganda, and Rwanda? How many tigers live in the Sariska Tiger Reserve of northwestern India? How many are left? How long can they survive?" Then there was anger in his voice. "How many grizzly bears occupy the North Cascades ecosystem, a discrete patch of mountain forest along the northern border of the state of Washington? Not enough. How many European brown bears are there in Italy's Abruzzo National Park? Not enough. How many Florida panthers in Big Cypress Swamp? Not enough. How many Asiatic lions in the forest of Gur? Not enough. How many Indri in the Alamazotra? Not enough," and so on. The world is broken into pieces now. The whole mood of the trip was kind of a roller coaster from amazement of getting to be and see and feel the Amazon and learning how incredibly rich of a place it is from a biodiversity perspective, and just being wowed every minute by birds and animals and insects and other amazing pieces of information the scientists shared with me, and then followed by big plummets of reality checks of things like what Vitek had said to me and other scientists. And it really, in fact, I could say that for my whole experience going around the world working on this book, but it was extremely pronounced when I was in the Amazon. Another, I want to read a little bit from an interaction I had with another scientist there, a long-term colleague of Dr. Lovejoy's. And she's a Brazilian scientist, and I like to tell this joke when I talk about the Amazon. Of all the scientists, and there were a whole bunch of them that I interviewed for this book, she definitely wins the blue ribbon for having the best name. Her name's Dr. Rita Mesquita. And she's a biologist and researcher with the largest research institute in the Amazon. And I met with her in Manaus and would like to read a little bit about that interaction. There's a forest fragment in the middle of Manaus, which is a very large city of well over 1 million people. And she took several of us on a little nature tour through the forest fragment and was very excited talking about different things, different animals, different insects, different plants. And occasionally one of us would ask her, well, what can you tell us about this plant, for example? And she'd say like, oh, well, I really don't know that much about it, and she'd go on to list like the name, the genus, the species, just everything. She was literally a walking encyclopedia and extremely passionate about what she did and loved her work. And again, like Lovejoy, was because she cared about the the rainforest so much and had literally devoted her entire life to studying it. And this is pre-Bolsonaro in Brazil, so things were already very, very bad. But of course now, keep in mind while I share more of this information that this is before the wildfires in the Amazon last summer and before Bolsonaro came into power. So Mesquita sees the world questioning conservation now and jeopardizing all the victories that have been achieved in setting aside land up until now. I work hard for conservation, she told me, but I lose sleep over wondering if I'm wasting my life. Am I wasting my life? Is this a lost cause? I keep doing it because it's the only thing I know to do. She says that she does not believe she and her colleagues are doing their jobs with the urgency needed. We are not telling the general public what is really going on, she said. Having co-edited a book with Lovejoy and authored many peer-reviewed scientific papers, Mesquita is a force to be reckoned with, but she personally feels inadequate when looking at the bigger picture. It is clear to her that we are nowhere near where we need to be. I have zero pride in all my papers because we are preaching to the converted, she says. What I want to do is talk to the outside world. I want to be able to just talk to people and tell them what is actually happening. We need to educate people about what is really going on with climate disruption. Like so many of the experts I'd spoken with for my book, Mesquita believes the root cause of climate disruption is humanity's lack of connection to the planet. Even here in Manaus, kids don't understand that they live in the Amazon, she told me. So there is no connection at all with anything, and that is the problem. There is sadness in her voice when she tells me this. I made a personal decision to not have kids because I don't have a future to offer them. I don't think we are going to win this battle. I think we are really done.